Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Wake up, Link.
In just about every case, video game tutorials have always been a necessary evil. From the developer's point of view, a tutorial is akin to taking a brand new player under their wing and teaching them about their game before allowing them to proceed on their own. Departing with crucial knowledge upon the uninitiated observer is pretty much what all creators have a natural desire to do. To some, a tutorial is a much appreciated and kind-hearted gesture. To others, a tutorial can feel like a major waste of time, as you might already be a fully experienced veteran and don't require any hand-holding. If your tutorial is designed to be a bit too long-winded or overly aggressive and intrusive, it can turn people away from your game entirely, leaving a bad first impression. Finding the perfect middle ground when crafting the tutorial for a video game has always been a bit of a struggle for the developers, I can imagine, but when you eventually do find that highly coveted Goldilocks zone, it just might end up looking a little something like this. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's tutorials have set the bar for the entire rest of the industry. They are the absolute best of the best at what they do, top-shelf quality design and completely unmatched by any other competitors. The sheer level of meticulous detail inscribed upon these two starting zones is truly underappreciated. Masterfully crafted opening experiences like these should be recognized, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. But the question I ask myself is, which of these tutorials reigns supreme over the other? Has Nintendo cemented Breath of the Wild's great plateau in history as the undefeated champion of tutorials? Or have they completely outdone themselves with Tears of the Kingdom's Great Sky Island? I think it's time to examine them both and see which one of the two will come out on top. To properly analyze both tutorials, I'll be comparing them to each other based on several generalized events which unfold during the duration of both areas and see which one does the event better. Starting with the opening, we have Breath of the Wild Link awakening in a mysterious chamber by the call of an unknown woman who wishes to guide him. Right off the bat, we learn that Link has amnesia and something must have happened to him, but we don't know what just yet. This effect on the player can work two ways. Either the player is dying to know more about Link's condition and what happened in his past that led up to him waking up in such an odd place, so the urge to leave the Great Plateau immediately to find answers is present. On the other hand, since we know absolutely nothing about Link's past and the fact that he has amnesia, no longer connected to anyone or anything, the player could take this information as a way to move forward without a care in the world, regardless of what that strange voice inside Link's head keeps saying. This is a magnificent way to instantaneously allow players the freedom to choose what path they'd like to take, and without even letting them take control of Link yet. The sense of a tutorial is there, but it also isn't quite there at the same time, which is exactly what we're looking for. Tears of the Kingdom does a complete 180 with its opening. We now have the full context of Breath of the Wild's events that led up to Tears of the Kingdom, so immediately we've formed a strong connection with Link and Zelda, as well as the world around them before we even start the game. Beginning the game inside of an ancient pitch-black cavern in search of the source of a new corrosive mist threat called Gloom, we have an established goal for the player right out of the gate. The fact that Zelda is accompanying us just further sets the tone. A lot of players are going to feel protective and on edge the entire time, due to our previous knowledge of Link being her appointed knight in Breath of the Wild. After everything that has happened, the players are hooked and eager to find out how things unfold. Link awakens yet again in an unfamiliar place, similar to Breath of the Wild, except this time, with all of his and our memories perfectly intact. With Link's mangled arm seemingly replaced by an unknown being, it flashes green and a disembodied voice begins to talk to us. Mentioning Zelda, Link lets his guard down. The voice comes off as friendly and interested in helping us. As quickly as it came, the voice is now gone. Turning around, we find the Master Sword, or at least what's currently left of it. Knowing that the Master Sword is now in utter ruin and in our hands right off the bat is far from what we're used to in this series. It makes you wonder, how am I going to fix this? There's got to be a way to do it, right? Making our way through the decrepit structure, learning what our new arm is capable of interfacing with to aid us, we finally emerge from the shadows with a courageous jump and find ourselves plummeting from heavenly heights. While exploring the lands below, we eventually come to find Zelda is essentially okay, but we just don't know where exactly she is just yet. Learning of her safety and that the Master Sword is now within her hands, hopefully for repair, the sense of urgency has now been alleviated. This can have a similar impact on the player as Breath of the Wild's opening. Either the player now feels relaxed enough to explore without much care in the world, or the player could still remain just as, if not more pressed, to rush into the future, craving more details of what's about to happen next. The openings of both games are skillfully put together, there's no doubt about that. If one game does the opening better, in my opinion, it's hands down Tears of the Kingdom that takes the cake. With the sea of information already at our disposal from the start of the game, we're much more invested in what happens in Tears of the Kingdom as well as what happened leading up to it. I enjoyed the clean slate feeling of Breath of the Wild's opening. It was refreshing, and it felt like I had no responsibilities, no burdens, no princesses in need of saving. Nope. Just a guy in the wilderness goofing around, doing whatever he feels like doing. Until you find out that you actually are supposed to have responsibilities, heavy burdens, and by the way, there is a princess who does need saving. Anyone who has played more than one Zelda title knows the song and dance by now. We all know exactly who Link is, and what his role is going to be in every game. But for the first time in the history of the franchise, we very briefly got to feel like a nobody. And it felt pretty good. Unfortunately, not nearly as good as the wind in our hair in Tears of the Kingdom. Next, I'd like to inspect the design of the tutorial areas and figure out which one was more expertly crafted. From the get-go, the games both teach the player how to use their most important progression tools, the Sheikah Slate and Link's new arm. Breath of the Wild then rewards Link with a shirt and some pants, giving the player an idea of what kind of useful things they might be able to find inside treasure chests. After equipping your new clothing, or ignoring them entirely, Link is met with a climbable wall and the stamina wheel, the first encounter with crucial gameplay mechanics the player will have to come to grips with for the remainder of their journey. Tears of the Kingdom goes a step further because by nature, this game at its core is more about falling, so the first thing Link comes across is a ledge that indicates it's safe to jump from. Landing in the water below, the player now has a wall to climb, teaching the same basic mechanics that Breath of the Wild did, but it doesn't end there. Jumping from ledge to ledge into the water beneath, heights increasing each time it happens, the player is starting to realize that as long as you dive into water, you'll be safe. If this wasn't enough, you're given a help text message that directly tells you this information just in case you are still unsure about it. Now Link is given an article of clothing as a reward, but only one this time. Obtaining only one piece of clothing can give the player that itching feeling to go look for the other missing pieces, because there's got to be more than just a shabby old pair of pants lying around, right? With only one place left to go for both games, our hero marches onwards and into the light. Finally outside and with a burst of adrenaline, we see it. We see the world we're about to explore. The sensation varies between the games, as Breath of the Wild's world is fully on display, while Tears of the Kingdom obscures the surface, keeping our minds clouded for just a little longer, but boy does the view look good from up here or what. Before I continue, I'm just going to give you a little heads up and say that for this next section, I will be picking up the pace just a little bit and generalizing, a little bit more often. Because if I didn't, then this video would be astronomically longer than it has any right to be. So, just a little forewarning. Do both games greet Link with a makeshift weapon right away? Yes, they do, but Tears of the Kingdom makes you trek just a little bit before you get one, which is not a very big deal. Do both games give the player an interactable NPC that shows the way towards our next destination? They do, however, I'll have to say that Breath of the Wild does it better here. The old man that you meet is much more impactful than an unfamiliar robot. His presence gives you the feeling that you're not alone, and it's comforting. There are many similar robots scattered about the Great Sky Island that were told to teach anyone who's curious how to perform many different tasks. The old man is also seen in several locations, but the approach here feels much more naturally done, seeing him trying to hunt prey for a meal or chop a tree down for some firewood. The old man's method of guiding the player is, in my opinion, a better designed way to go about it than 100 identical robots everywhere basically reading a manual to you. It gets to the point to where you actually stop caring about what every construct has to say because you know it's just going to be something boring, so you start actively avoiding talking to them. The old man has the opposite effect. We're interested in what he's up to because he remains mysterious and keeps his dialogue fresh the whole time. While Tears of the Kingdom does give us Rauru, he just sort of doesn't do anything the whole time we're exploring the Great Sky Island. He only gazes upon vistas, commenting on them, or watches the constructs do their thing. He never really has much of a purpose being there, and honestly, you wouldn't be missing out on anything if the devs just plain didn't even include him lingering around in the Great Sky Island. Breath of the Wild wins this one. There are many chances to learn about cooking in both games, as well as learning about their benefits, one crucial benefit being temperature resistances to travel harsh environments. Both games do equally well here in my opinion. Both games also have 4 shrines that each grant the player with a new ability while allowing them to practice using it throughout their respective shrines. But do you get plenty of opportunities to utilize these newly acquired abilities outside of these shrines? Breath of the Wild provides the player with a simple arrangement that corresponds to the ability you obtained within the perimeter of each shrine's entrance. The usage of each ability unfortunately plummets from there onwards, as there aren't very many instances where you'd find yourself actually needing to use any of them other than the occasional bombable wall sprinkled here and there. You could argue that using Cryonis to cross the icy river on your way back has merit, although incredibly unnecessary given the fact that there is already a bridge right there. Heck, the bridge even houses a hidden Korok that requires Cryonis to access it, so you might as well just take the bridge. There really isn't much of a use for your runes on the Great Plateau, but Tears of the Kingdom's Great Sky Island more than makes up for it. The abilities you obtain in this game feel like they are far more useful and utilized much more frequently than the runes in Breath of the Wild, because to me it seems like they were designed to be used for exploration and survival first and foremost. The infinite bomb runes will be sorely missed, but what replaced them is completely game-changing. Having the ability to combine almost anything together with Ultra Hand and Fuse is truly incredible. Swimming upwards through solid matter and reversing the flow of time for any object is unbelievably cool. These new abilities don't even require any sort of puzzle-related situation in order to get full proper usage out of them either. Fuse offers a band-aid solution to one of the most controversial gameplay mechanics found in both games, that being weapon durability. Now that everything drops an item that can be fused to your weapons and shields, people will now have an actual incentivized reason to raid enemy camps. Not only will you obtain the weapons they were holding, but you can also potentially come out with even more powerful weapons than you previously started with, thanks to Fuse. Tears of the Kingdom's Great Sky Island is one big playground. Around every corner lies another opportunity to utilize multiple abilities, whether it's slapping together a wind-propelled minecart with Ultra Hand, climbing to the top of the Temple of Time with Ascend, bolstering your equipment with a Fuse, or reversing a mistake with Recall. There's always going to be a unique use for every ability at every turn, which makes this a truly Great Sky Island. A powerful enemy awaits the player on both the Great Plateau as well as the Great Sky Island, but which one of them is the bigger bad? Breath of the Wild houses a stone talus on its Great Plateau, which might come as a surprise to a lot of new players because it's completely missable. The fact that it can even be missed at all is not a good start. The lack of a real threat to the player in the beginning of the game can be a big turnoff for some people. So missing a crucial experience like this could spoil their perception of the rest of the game. Your first fight against a stone talus is pretty fun. You get to use multiple tools in your kit to take it down, bomb runes to disable it, and climbing to reach the weak point. A fresh and new approach to battling that shouldn't be missable until you randomly stumble across one while roaming the rest of Hyrule after the tutorial is already over. Tears of the Kingdom's Great Sky Island contains a flux construct, roughly in the center of the whole island. Boldly on display from just about anywhere, the player likely won't be missing this enemy. Intimidating from a distance, scanning its surroundings for potential people to flatten, it really makes the player question whether or not they should mess with it at all. Getting to it in the first place is a challenge you'll have to conquer by crossing the open area to reach the floating island the machine is stationed on. The fight is brilliantly designed. Much like the stone talus, flux constructs have obvious weak points, but things get interesting this time as the weak points move around the body of the construct every time it changes forms. Speaking of shape-shifting, this thing takes on the form of a large wall intending to crush anything still lingering beneath it. The opportunity to use Ascend here to reach the new position of the weak point is genius and is extremely effective. Your next obstacle is a giant rolling cube, which allows us to utilize Ultra Hand to disassemble it, making it a little bit easier to reach that weak point. Once defeated, it drops a powerful fuse material and several Zonai charges, which are all extremely useful rewards. If you somehow get yourself stuck on this floating island, you can simply dive into the water cleverly placed below. All in all, both games have optional big bads, but the winner here is definitely Tears of the Kingdom. My final point of comparison between these two starting areas lies with the design behind leaving them. Do they continue to guide the player even as you're approaching the mainland? Breath of the Wild's Great Plateau is surrounded by things guaranteed to catch the player's eye. A strange flower on top of a hill that turns out to be a Korok. A pack of wild horses roaming the field that you can tame. An enemy camp just begging to be wiped out. I like to think of the Great Plateau as a parental figure guiding a younger you as you learn how to ride a bike for the first time. Leaving the tutorial behind, the training wheels have come off and you're given one final loving push before letting go, and you're riding all on your own at last. You have figured it out and the world is now yours. Tears of the Kingdom's method of letting go of the player is a bit different. Even with the clouds now mostly cleared, the surface is still very obscure and difficult to make out anything of interest other than the obvious major landmarks, those weird crop circles, shrines, and towers. You're also not really given the tools to go absolutely anywhere just yet. You still don't even have a paraglider. Without a paraglider, the player is going to feel forced to just fall straight down into the water below and make their way immediately to Lookout Landing. You have the option to go anywhere you want though, sure, but realistically speaking, why would you? The most interesting thing nearby is Lookout Landing, so you might as well just make the journey over there right away. It does actually reward you with the paraglider, so until you do go there, the world isn't really yours just yet. As cool as the spectacle was, skydiving onto the surface, I'm afraid Breath of the Wild jingled those shiny keys in our faces with just a little bit more refined finesse. Equally innovating on the new player experience, these two titanic video games have fought well, but one of them has just barely triumphed over the other. The winner of the tutorial showdown is Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild, a masterclass in tutorial design, created a magnificent foundation for video games to learn from for years to come, while Tears of the Kingdom has surpassed the master in many ways. It leaves me nothing but excited for the future of the franchise and hopes of an even better experience, soaring even higher for the next Legend of Zelda title, likely to release on Nintendo's next bigger and better hardware. With all that extra power, I can only imagine the adventure they are going to craft for us next. If you've enjoyed yourself, there's much more to come in the future, so please subscribe and stick around for another onslaught of Zelda lore from Gossip Geist.